Hi, welcome to Pain and Revival podcast. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Today, I have a very special guest. It's our first guest ever, Dr. Megan Afshar Martins. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. So I have a question. Today I'm just gonna ask you a few questions and then kind of have it lead from there.
Let's
Um,
do it.
So there's a quote from you from a DE when you spoke. By the way, you're like an amazing speaker. You always do great.
Thanks.
And it says, "We are given one life, one opportunity. Be the best you can be." And I'm just curious, what's your advice to help someone do that?
So I have no recollection saying that. I read you had sent me that as a quote and I was like, "Wait, I said this?" That's great. I like it. Um I think we have more choice and more opportunity than a lot of times we think, especially in this generation now. Um we don't realize how much choice we have in the matter of what our life looks like. Yeah, and I love this podcast. I love what you're doing is talking about people overcoming situations and not kind of living into something that has been done to you or not been done to you. That it's really our life, and I don't want to be the product of what somebody has done to me. I don't want to be the product of what somebody has not done to me. I'm a Christian and I believe that God sent his son. He thought that my life was worth the life of his son, to die and to call me his own and to cover over all of those things, something that people didn't do or something that maybe somebody did do negatively to me. Um, and I get that choice. I get that choice every single day. Am I going to live into that promise? Am I going to set my mind on that? We were talking about this at church, actually on Sunday. There's a story of the man at the pool of Bethesda in the Bible, and he's been crippled for 30 years. And Jesus comes up to him and he says, "Do you want to be well?" And this pool, the story was that there was an angel that would come and stir the water, and the first person to jump into the pool would be healed. And he had been there for 30 years trying to be the first person in the pool when the water would get stirred. And he tells Jesus, "Well, I don't have anybody to put me in the water. And every time I try to get into the water, somebody steps over me first." And that, I feel like, is such a beautiful image of, we have this opportunity to be bitter that people are doing things to us, or be frustrated or upset or victimized because nobody's helping us, when you don't see that the person of Jesus is standing right before you and saying, "But I'm here and I'm asking, do you want to be well?" And I just thought I love that story. And I think that's so beautiful that we have this opportunity to not live into things that people have done to us or not done for us. Um, because God came in flesh as Jesus, paid it all for our life, for our brokenness, to give us healing, to give us wholeness, to give us joy, to give us life. And we get that choice every single day, that if we want to choose into it or not. So
Yeah.
we have one life.
Yeah, that's great, honestly. I think that's really valid, like, especially in today's our generation, my generation. We're very blessed, and I think we don't realize how blessed and lucky we are because like we don't have to live through some of the things that my grandparents lived through or that my grandparents lived through, and the
Yeah.
economy is better than what it was then, and
Yeah.
I feel like they're not very grateful for that, and I think this podcast maybe will reach some people and make them be
Yeah.
a little more grateful. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, what's your advice to someone who is like losing faith in themselves in any situation at any age, really?
I think, I mean, it kind of goes back to what I said before, that like we have the choice. It's not necessarily whether or not we have or don't have. I know I've shared it a few times at DE when you've heard me speak about, I didn't have this life of luxury growing up. I didn't have everything put before me. I had to work really hard for things. And I think probably the first 30 years of my life, I really saw that as a negative against me. And there was a turning point around the time I turned 30 where I was just done. I was done letting myself be the victim of my own story. And I was just going to be grateful for everything that I had, and really realizing like what you were saying right now, we have so much more in this generation than any generation before us. So that even though I didn't have parents who paid for my college, or parents who bought me all the things that I wanted, or, we grew up, we didn't have a lot growing up. But that's okay. I mean, people in the past who didn't have a lot growing up. I spoke about this at the last DE, like my grandparents. So my mom's parents who've since passed away, they were Depression era children, and then World War II generation when they were adults, and they had to choose when they were having children, do we have enough money to support having children? And they waited. They worked for several years to make sure that they would be able to feed their children. That's not even a thought in our minds now, because we have so many support systems around us that we don't really have to think about that. We don't need our children, once they reach second or third grade, to drop out of school and start working to support the family. We don't have things like that anymore. So for me to look at my life and think, well, I wasn't really given a leg up, where I see friends or other people who maybe it seems like we're given more of a leg up, I just don't think that's a reality. So back to your question, that I think if you're losing hope in yourself, realizing that really you are stronger than you think that you are. If you're in a place where you think you have no hope, there's so much more abundance around you than you realize. It's not something that you have to strive for or work for, but just live into this abundance, this promise, this beauty over your life, instead of I'm gonna work really hard because I wasn't given enough.
Right. The only thing I have to add is that the power of God is in you, and that's all you need. That's all you need.
If you hear noise in the back, my baby is playing on his little play mat, so he's supposed to be napping right now, but he's not. It's okay. The joys
He's
of
so cute.
parenthood. Yeah, he's so cute. He might miss.
Yeah, so I definitely relate to that with my situation. I was, for a little while when I was with my mom, I was really stuck in that mindset that my life was the worst thing possible, and that I'm just doom, basically, and like that I was never going to be anything and nothing was ever going to come of me. And the only way I got over that was literally just opening my eyes, like take off the blinders and look and appreciate the little things. Not every single person is going to be your friend. Not everyone's going to like you. And for me, it happened to be my parents who weren't very nice to me, but kind of get over it. Like it's not that easy, but that's kind of what I had to do. You just kind of have to be like, well, it happened and it's in the past. I don't like to read my books backwards, so don't read yours,
I think it's amazing that you are young realizing that, because like I said, it took me 30 years to get to that point. And I'm just really encouraged when we interact to think that, as far as I have come in my life, that my hope for you is that by the time you're 38, you're my age, that you're so much farther ahead than I am now. Let me get my baby. I'm so sorry. He's crying.
You're good. You're good.
He'll have a guest appearance. You just want to have a guest appearance. Okay. Yeah, that you are so much you're going to be so much farther ahead by the time you're 38. And that's amazing. And, I think as children, our primary source of stability, our source of safety and comfort is supposed to be our parents. That's the way it was built and designed. So for you to feel like you didn't have that, and that was a huge negative. That was a huge negative. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
minimize that and say, oh, well, just get over it, Nevaeh. It's okay. But there is the hope and the joy of knowing that God can fill that hole. He wants to fill that hole. He does in people that open up and submit and allow him to fill that space and that void. It does not change the fact that your parents did not fulfill the role that they were supposed to. But how amazing that we have a loving God who comes in and says, okay, I'm going to adopt you as my own, and I'm going to cover all of these things that haven't been done for you.
Yeah. That's why I used it. That's why I started this podcast. Well, one of the many reasons is because I can't let what happened to me bring me down. And now I can use it to maybe inspire someone else and help someone. And
Yeah.
I feel like people don't realize how powerful their story is. Like, I hear so many people, they tell me their story, and I'm like, that's incredible. Like, that's the most inspiring story ever. And they're like, oh, well, I can't. Like, it's not. And they're all doomed and, that type of stuff. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, you don't see the beauty in your story. Like, I don't. It's a mindset, I guess. But I'm like, I don't get it. But back to what you were saying about not having a lot. I want to know what kept you going in school, because you said your parents didn't pay for your college. So what kept you going in school when everything was hard and the money was really tight? What was your drive?
I mean, I think I grew up with money always being tight. I got my first job when I was 11 years old, and it wasn't anything. I wasn't working like 9 to 5. But I was probably making $100 a month, and as a 11-year-old, I was pretty much a baller. But I started using that money. I started saving it, and then using that money to do things like buy my own clothes. And when I was 16, I bought my own car and paid for my own insurance and paid for my own gas and things that the majority of my friends were not having to do. So that wasn't any shock to me when I was in school, like to not really have much, I would say. And you have student loans. It's not like,
Right.
again, the generations before us, before student loans existed, we hear stories of people like in chiropractic school who would have to go to school for one quarter and then work for one quarter to have enough money to go to school for the next quarter. And it would take them twice as long to get through because they had to physically work their way through. We have student loans now. So I did my first 2 years of chiropractic school. I worked my way through. I worked and made decent money working at a restaurant. So I always had money, and I took out the bare minimum loans just to cover what I couldn't cover with what I was making. And so I had a job. My chiropractic school shut down 2 years into me being in school. And all of us had to find new schools to go to. So it was 2 years into our 4-year program. And I was living in Los Angeles at the time. I was dating a great guy who we were going to get married. And my school shut down and I was going to have to move, and he didn't want to have to move with me. So he very, very unexpectedly broke up with me. I had to move to Atlanta to finish school, not knowing anybody there, just packed up my car, drove to Atlanta. I didn't have a job there, so I just took out student loans and lived off of student loans. But I wouldn't say that anything financially was too hard as a student. I would say when you get into practice and you don't have the government giving you money each month, Obviously you're going to have to pay back, but that was really hard. And what kept me going at that point was part of it being like the fear of failure. Or the drive to not fail, I guess is better. I'm not going to fail. 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 A saying that I said often to myself that I don't know if this is rude, but I would say, and I still say it, I usually say it to younger people in practice or to students. Lesser people than you have made it through the chiropractic program. Lesser people than you have opened up a practice and been successful. Like you can do it. You can do it. And I would just tell myself that all the time. Like, I can do it. I can do this. I can do this. Those first 2 years of practice were absolutely grueling. I was in a city. I did not move back to California. I decided to move to Greenville, South Carolina, just because I liked it. I didn't know anybody, didn't have any friends, didn't have any community. Finding friends as an adult is really hard. Really, really hard. I'm so blessed constantly for the community and the friends that I have now. I've been in this area for 10 years, but the friends that I have now, I'm so blessed because making friends as an adult is really hard. So trying to start a business from the ground up, trying to get patients and while honing my skill and my craft and having a business and having overhead and paying rent on my apartment. And it just was a lot. It was a lot and it was really hard. But I think I just had to keep going. I had to keep taking one more step, because what was the answer? I mean, there were literally months where I was thinking, okay, if I don't work harder, if I don't just keep moving forward, I'm going to be living in my car because I didn't have anybody else to step in and pay my rent or help or anything like that. And so there's a lot of motivation when you're like, okay, I'm not going to be able to live in my house anymore if I can't make this work. I think, at DE, it was Dean Satilli. Dean Satilli's his talks have always resonated so much with me. I think because he brings a lot of Jesus into what he's talking about. And he's funny. So gosh, he cuts from
Yes.
funny to like straight to the heart, right? He's amazing. But he gave a talk once and he said, if you keep kicking, eventually you'll reach the surface. And that's how I felt in practice. Like I was underwater. But if I had it actually printed and put on my front desk, if you keep kicking, eventually you'll reach the surface. And that was a lot of my motivation is like, okay, I'm going to trust what people who have done this before me and who have been successful have said. And I'm just going to trust that if I keep kicking, eventually I'm going to reach the surface. So, yeah.
Wow. I didn't know he said that. I probably wasn't alive then, but.
No, he said that you may have been alive, but he said that a long time ago.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I think I was in school when he said that. So.
Oh, yeah.
10, 11 years ago.
Yeah. He's so cute. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I love Dean. He's great.
She's not talking about you in case you're just listening and not watching.
Oh yeah, no.
She doesn't think you're cute.
No. Judah's cute. So the last question I have is, what's your best piece of advice to students? Which I guess you kind of already gave it, but do you have any other advice to students?
I mean, I say this to people all the time. Live like a student. Just because you can take out the maximum amount of money and the government will give you all this money, you're going to have to pay it back at a really high percentage. Live like a student. We had a really nice cafe on campus. We had a coffee shop on campus. We had a student store that sold like $45 sweatshirts, and people were decked out in the school apparel. People were eating every day in the cafe, spending like $10 on their breakfast, $10 on their lunch, every single day, getting a coffee, going out on the weekends. It's funny because after I spoke at DE this last time, somebody came up to me he graduated with me, and he said, man, I should have hung out with you more because I was the one using all of the money that I could possibly get and using it on the weekends, like having bar tabs that were $100 on a Saturday night and just wasn't even thinking about it. Where what I just tell people all the time, live like a student, drive a super old used car that's paid off and you don't have payments on. Don't just go out to eat all the time, make your own food. I feel like those things alone. I mean, we live in a time now where you can buy clothes at thrift stores or consignment that are like legit really nice. I have a lot of really good friends here in this area that love going to thrift stores. They have money, but they love going to thrift stores and finding like that awesome find that organic linen dress that would be $200 if you bought it somewhere else, but they bought it at Goodwill for $3. We have that ability now. Our grandparents didn't have that ability. We have that ability to still dress really nice and not pay a ton of money for it. So live like a student, because the day will come when you are successful and when you can spend money and buy things like that and spend a lot of money. And that's great. But right now, when you don't have money, live like a student, because the higher your loans are, the higher that voice is going to be. That debt is going to become your master. And if that debt is your master, then you're going to be convinced when you get into practice, potentially convinced, maybe I want to do things that I didn't think I wanted to do. Maybe I'm going to get into selling something in my office that I don't really know if it's good for people, but I'm going to do it because I need to pay back my loans. I'm in so many chiropractic Facebook groups, and people often will say, hey, what do you guys do for a second stream of income? And that tells me that they probably have really high student loans, or they're not able to be successful in practice because they're not implementing the tenets of what we kind of learn at DE, like just going out and telling people the amazing, miraculous story of the power of their body to heal itself. And I'm so sad for people like that. But I really think we have the opportunity to make sure that money and loans and finances is as minimal as possible, so that voice isn't super loud in the back of our head telling us what we should and shouldn't be doing in practice.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like when I went to Sherman for Lyceum, they have like all that stuff, and like I don't know, in my head I wasn't imagining like a coffee shop and like that type of stuff. Like I was imagining just a school, and I'm like, we walk in there and I'm like, this is crazy. Like it's very nice and it's amazing, but it's like, this is crazy.
I mean, I'll tell you what, if you left the house and you didn't have food, like how awesome that they do have a cafe on campus, but you maybe shouldn't be utilizing that every single day, every single lunch, every single breakfast, so.
Right. Yeah, I got you. So thank you so much for coming on. This was truly amazing. You're one of my favorite people. You're just so amazing and so kind to me and kind to everyone you see. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your message.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you. All right. I hope everyone has an amazing day. Make sure you tune in next Thursday for another special guest. You can stream on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like and comment and follow us on Facebook at Pain and Revival Podcasts. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great day.